Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Harrison Bridge live show where we are discussing imposter syndrome and, more importantly, how you can develop strategies to overcome it. To discuss this topic, we have the absolutely fabulous Dr. Lalitaa Suglani, who is a chartered psychologist and executive coach. Hello, Lalitaa.
Hi, Lee.
I'm also joined by the magnificent Kirsty Ames, who's emceeing the show. Hi, Kirsty.
Hello, Lee. Hello, everybody. And just to let everybody know, I will be dealing with the questions. So if anybody has any questions for Lee or Lalitaa as we go through, just pop them in and I'll bring them up for everybody.
Thank you, Kirsty. So, Lalitaa, the research shows that around 70% of executives experience imposter syndrome at some point during their career. So, I've experienced it at school, at work, putting myself out there and doing a LinkedIn live show. What is imposter syndrome?
So when we think of imposter syndrome, I think there's so many different meanings that people associate to it. But for me, what it means is that behind the scenes, and things that people can't see is the self-doubt, is the anxiety. And in front, that people see is that you're a high achiever, that you're organized, you've got everything together, you're in control of everything. But no one really sees the things that are going on behind, where it's a bit like the analogy that I get is like the swan. So the swan, it's just gliding through the water and it looks really beautiful, really like just fine, it's okay. And then underneath it's like paddling like this. And that's exactly how I envision imposter syndrome to be, where we are very much behind the scenes trying to manage everything, but we don't show that side. So for me, it's like there's so much self-doubt, anxiety behind the scenes, and in front, we don't see that.
Yeah, and for me, it's doubting your abilities. You feel like a fraud.
Yes.
And you mentioned there that it affects high achievers, perhaps disproportionately so. What's the reason for that?
When we think of high achievers, we think of people that want to always get to a certain level. They have expectations that they want to meet. So they're always trying to strive to that next level. And often we can end up trying to aim to be a perfectionist, where we're trying to reach a certain point. And if we don't, we can be very hard on ourselves. So when you just said there about being a fraud, being a phony, we often have that belief that I just got here through luck. I didn't get here through hard work. And we have these beliefs that can then just stop us from reaching forward and taking other opportunities, because in the background, we don't believe that we got there in the way that we felt that we've worked really hard to do.
You don't feel good enough.
Yeah.
And is it right to call it syndrome, or shouldn't it be called imposter phenomena?
So a lot of people have actually mentioned this, and I do
Okay.
feel like when we think of syndrome, we think of something negative associated to syndrome, or that there's something wrong with you. Whereas actually, if you are more aware of how imposter syndrome shows up day to day in your life, and you have some tools to be able to help you manage that, it can help you achieve things that you weren't even aware that you could achieve. So it is about the association with syndrome. But if we use the word phenomena, it's actually like, how do I apply this to myself? And I associate it with being, yes, okay, this is what's going on for me, but I learned to become more authentic, and I'm able to take more opportunities.
Yeah, and syndrome is perhaps more associated with an illness as well, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So, first question then, when I was researching for this show and how it shows up for different people, one individual described to me that they might have a robust conversation with a CEO, and they don't have the confidence to challenge the CEO, and then they beat themselves up afterwards. If only I'd said X, Y, Z. Is that the kind of thing that's common? And what is causing that?
So we think of, okay, I'm here, I'm in front of this manager that is telling me I need to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to listen because I need to be good enough. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want them to think that I'm not capable. I don't want them to think I'm inadequate. So I'm going to listen to everything they're saying, and I'm going to agree, and I'm going to show them that, yep, okay, we can do this. And then when you leave and you have space to reflect and space to think about that situation, you think, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I just do this? And then you beat yourself up because you're just like, you should have said this. Now you've got this amount of work to do. You've got this, and you're not happy with these decisions, because when you really intuitively connect with yourself, you're like, these things don't feel right for me. But in that moment, fear takes over. Fear is the thing that stops you, because you don't want to be rejected. You don't want to be abandoned by manager or the place of work that you're working in. So fear just really overwhelms you in that moment. And that's where then you end up agreeing. And then later, once you have space and you have time for reflection, you just think, what is this? So yeah, Lee, it is common that people will think why didn't I just say this? Why didn't I say this?
And that fear is, am I right in saying that it's that fight or flight syndrome, which is a physical reaction to our ancestors, in being in dangerous situations, but our brain can't tell the difference between what is dangerous and what isn't, and then we get that physical reaction. Is that what's
So when
going
we
on there?
think of fear, it triggers the anxiety within your body. So your body, you're now thinking, this is a dangerous situation. This is dangerous because your body is here for survival. Your body does not want to feel rejection. It does not want to feel abandonment. Those are emotions that are seen a threat for you. So as soon as your body has an inkling, or your mind has an inkling that this is something that's dangerous, your body goes into fight flight mode. So that fight flight mode is, you might just agree, you might just overcompensate and take on more work because you feel you need to be good enough in that moment. And then when that happens later on, once you've calmed down, adrenaline's gone down, you've had space just to reflect and you're out of the anxiety, that's when then you start to reflect back and think, why did I do that for? Why did I just agree all this work? And that in itself can bring on your inner critic coming out, shouting at you, feeling shame, feeling frustration. So it's like a negative cycle that we can get stuck in.
So who needs enemies when you've got imposter syndrome?
It's a battle, isn't it? It's a battle and it's a conflict that's going on behind the scenes. And no one has any idea. Like everyone, like you said, 70% of people, and that was done pre-COVID, this research. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens post-COVID once we've had more time at home, working hybrid, where we haven't had as much interaction, because that all builds up, where I'm not good enough, I'm not capable. Look at what all these other people are doing. Look, they've logged in at 7 o'clock. I got an email from them at 11 o'clock. So it can play out in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So what can we do to manage the imposter? What would be your top 3 tips?
Number one, I would say tune in. Tune in to your your in world. And what I mean by your in world is that what is going on in terms of your thoughts, your feelings, to help you understand your behaviors. So when you tune in and you really listen, it's having space, it's giving you clarity, it's you being disconnected from everything else, and you're not sensitive to everyone else around you. You're now looking and understanding what's going on for me, what's happening for me, why am I feeling this way? And I think that's the really big and powerful word, is why. Why am I feeling this way? What's like causing me to feel this fear? What is it that's making me in this moment feel the way that I'm feeling? And how is it consciously now next time I can manage this, or I can change this? So if we really go deep and dive in and understand what the roots of this is that's causing me this behavior and this distress, how can I then manage it?
So is that like being mindful, being present with your thoughts? So not meditation, but mindful of what's going on, listening to your thoughts.
Like, it's like, yeah, I agree completely. So say, for example, me and you now are talking and I've just said something and you've said something back like, oh, are you sure that's imposter syndrome? And now I'm like, oh, maybe this isn't imposter syndrome. Maybe I've got it wrong. But I haven't shown you that. I'm thinking that in the background. So that's a trigger for me. And if I'm able to take that away and tune in and be like, hang on, when he said that, what came up for me? I felt like I was inadequate. I felt like I don't know what I'm talking about. I felt like I'm not good enough. But where does this come from? So if again I go deeper and deeper and understand, and then even say to myself, okay, if this was my friend, what would I say to my friend right now? Because sometimes using your friend as an external entity, that can help you to communicate, because the relationship we have with ourselves can be that we talk to ourselves in a very sort of negative way, where we battle with ourselves. We can be a bully to ourselves. But if we think of our friends, we have compassion. If we think of our loved ones, we have compassion. So it's a very different way of thinking about the situation.
Do you think sometimes as well that just recognizing that this is where it's actually coming from in itself, giving a name to some of the anxiety, can also just help alleviate some of it because you understand where it's coming from?
Yeah, definitely. Because sometimes you feel you're anxious, and that can then take you to, why am I feeling this way? What's going on? What's happening? Then you think, oh, is something happening to my health? Is something going on here? Is this? And then we can start overthinking, catastrophizing with these thoughts. But if you just acknowledge, okay, I know where this is coming from. It's my imposter talking, and we externalize the imposter. So it's not then that it's all of me that's thinking this way. It's part of me. It's part of me that's thinking this way right now, and it's my imposter that's going off. How do I self-talk to that imposter within me?
Okay. And so is there anything that you can do? I know the second tip sort of helps you to listen to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the second tip is all about journaling. So it's actually, again, giving you space to reflect. And when you're writing, when you're processing, again, research has shown that when you're processing, when you're writing, sorry, you process in a different way. There's like 2-3 different types of processing that you're doing in between that, compared to when you're just thinking about something. So if you're writing and you're reflecting, there's a power to that. So you can write out, this is what my imposter is saying. How do I want to respond to that? You can write out. But even if you're just writing out your triggers and writing out the things that you're noticing are going on in the day that perhaps have brought up some of these feelings of confusion, or I'm not feeling good enough, that's where then you can use journaling as a great tool to reflect. And I know a lot of people will be like, oh, but I don't want to sit there and journal. But you know what? You're doing it for yourself. You're doing it for yourself to really grow, to really develop. And I know it can feel exhausting and I know it can feel really overwhelming, but you're doing it for you.
Do you think with journaling, sorry, Lee, I've got so many questions. I'm enjoying this very much. And if anybody else has any questions as well, please feel free to pop them in and I'll bring them up. Do you think with journaling, should it be done something that's done at the same time every day? Should you just do it, I'm having anxiety, let me just start free writing? How do you do it, or is it different for everybody?
Again, it's very different for everyone. So what I tend to say to individuals that I'm working with, and even with myself, I have a note section on my phone. And in my phone, it's a note section. If something's come up, because otherwise you go through the day and you forget about things that come up and things that happen. And all I'll do is I'll just put down the situation. What is the situation? What's happened? And then when I get a chance, it doesn't have to be every day at the same time. We're human. We live very busy lives. There's no way we can sit there and be like, 7 o'clock, I need to journal. And also you might not be in the right space. So it's, again, allowing compassion for that. But it is putting it and integrating it as part of your routine. So it becomes part of your reflection and growth. And if you struggle to sit and do it by yourself, that's where you can get in contact with a therapist, or even with a friend that you think, hang on, I don't know what's going on here. Do you have space to talk about this with me?
For me, I have like a high need to achieve, and then when you don't achieve, you're not very happy, and it's just not realistic. You cannot succeed all the time. If you're running a sports race, only one person can win. So you've got to be realistic as well, haven't you?
Yeah, and it's understanding, why is it we put this expectation on ourselves? Where does this expectation come from? Why do I feel I need to be this in order to feel good enough? So I'm looking for certain things externally for me to fill my glass. So if my glass is now full, it's because I've got this and I've got this and I've got this. See, I'm good enough. But do we need that in order to feel good enough? Or do we need to change the way that we're thinking in order to learn to feel good within ourselves? And yes, we set expectations that are realistic, that are intentional, that are conscious to our being, rather than we need it because we need to feel good enough.
And is that from our experiences, society, a mix?
Yeah, definitely. You hit it on the head there. So yeah, it comes from our experiences. It comes from childhood, attachments, the relationships that we may have had with teachers. And it's not to go back and blame that. It's to try and understand, hang on, why is it that I show up with high expectations here in my adult self? Because if I can go back and understand where this started and why I'm so hard on myself, it just gives me more insight into then how I want to now move forward, because I understand why I'm showing up in this way.
Okay, so I'll start blaming my parents then, Lalitaa. So
yeah, I think so. I think that would be really good.
Okay, and what about the third tip?
So the third tip is all about gratitude. And it's reminding ourselves of the things that we have, because more than often we're always striving for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And we don't have space and time just to feel and think about the things that we do have. And it just changes the energy that we carry day to day. So if you wake up and you've done your gratitudes, and it's not just writing down, okay, I've got a roof over my head. Why? Why is that so important to you? So you're going into the real depths, the real meaning of it. Why is it that I'm happy that I have a healthy daughter, or a healthy mom, or a healthy dad? Why is that so important to me? Why do I feel this way? So you're going one step deeper into really appreciating and understanding that connection that you might have with the things that you already have.
I noticed during COVID, which was a real tough time, that, a lot of us realized that you can't eat money, when you couldn't leave the house, for an hour a day. Just getting the weekly shop was just something you were really grateful for, wasn't it? So, yeah, okay. And I think the other thing on that, there's science behind that gratitude actually rewires our brains. So it's trying to take it from a negative bias to a positive bias. Is that the case?
Yeah. So like, again, if we think of this, so Kirsty Lee, do you see that as half full or half empty?
I do see half full. I do.
Yeah,
Half full.
2/3 full to me.
Oh, yeah, okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough. We're going to go into the specifics of it. Yeah, 2/3. But if we think of that, that's gratitude in itself. If we keep focusing on this bit, that it's not, I need more of this, I need more of this, I need more of this, we're always striving for the next thing. And that's fine. It's good to have goals. It's good to be ambitious and to have things in mind that you want to do. But it's not forgetting these things that you have. It's not forgetting the things that you've got around you already. And it's simple things. It's like going into nature and really connecting. So there's a real science behind why gratitude is powerful, because it really allows you to realize the things that you do have around you right now. It's being mindful in the moment. And even when I do it with clients, or when I do it even with loved ones, and I'm like, right, start noticing the gratitudes around you and the things that you're grateful for. And they're like, oh, this is whatever. This is just a silly thing to do. And then they'll come back to me and be like, I noticed that the grass was really green today. And it just brought up something within me that I've never had this emotion. And they're like, I don't want to tell you that you're right, but it felt really good that I was able to notice that. So it's just, the more you do it, the consistent you are with it, the more that it changes this feeling that you're feeling. You feel content with what you have.
And just with that, sorry, just one last, is it something that you have to have written down? Is it something that you combine with your journaling, or is it more of a thought process? You know, I think I'm grateful. I'm acknowledging I'm grateful. Do you have to write it down, or can it be mental?
So I think it's different for everyone. So some people like to do it in the mirror. Some people like to write it down. Some people like to just think it. So it's again, not just putting you into a box and saying this is what is going to work for you, but it's understanding what is it that works for you? What is it that you notice? Is it writing it down because it makes it real for you to see? Is it that you want to type it out in a WhatsApp group with yourself? Is it that you want to speak it to, like, even loved ones, and at the end of the day you say, okay, what is it that's been good for you today? What's been good for you? So it can be an exchange in that way. So it's about applying it to how does it fit in your life.
My imposter's telling me, but won't gratitude stop me from, hitting the moon and aiming for the stars, by being a bit more content? Or is that not the case?
I'm smiling because I have this question a lot. It's like, but I don't want to let go of this, because if I let go of this, I won't be able to then do this and do this and do this. But being hard on yourself is not going to allow you to get to a goal that you want. If you really are intentionally focused on a goal and you feel authentically passionate about this goal, you can get to it. If you have a strategy in place, if you have a way or a plan forward, you will get to this goal. But if you're getting to this goal because you're bullying yourself into it, that's what you've learned to do. But is this also about unlearning to stop bullying yourself and learning to be compassionate? But being compassionate isn't associated with, oh, it's an excuse. I'm just going to be lazy. I'm just not going to end up doing anything. That goes back into your patterns. Why is it that you feel, if I'm nice to myself, I'm not going to be successful? Where does that come from? So when you go deeper into that and understand the association that you might have with being compassionate or having gratitude, it's almost like, I've learned that if you're grateful for things, that means then that you're not going to be successful. And it's relearning that way of thinking.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So trying to deal with the imposter is easier said than done, though, isn't it? So what support can people perhaps get externally with this?
I think, you know what, the top tips that I gave, yes, it's great to be able to have them and implement them, but sometimes it's that you need a mirror in front of you. So working with someone, having a therapist, a coach, or even someone at work, a mentor, or someone that you feel comfortable and safe with. And it's like, okay, I want to really understand my patterns. And there's not a weakness with that. And there's nothing wrong with you if you're seeking that support. It's sometimes we don't understand and we can't see the things that other people can see. So being able to get that support, yes, great. You can journal, you can do gratitude, you can do things that are available on the internet, courses. But I always feel personally that when you're doing one-to-one work, it's you with someone else and you're focused on yourself, on your journey, on understanding what's got you to where you are right now. And there's a power in that because you get a reflection. So for me, the support that if you want is to have mentoring, coaching, therapy to dive deeper into understanding more of why you're showing up the way that you are.
Yeah, we actually did have Scott ask that exact question: how much does having a mentor help alleviate the imposter syndrome? And you're saying really highly. Now, on that, is it somebody who should be qualified, who understands this, who's had training, or can it be a friend or somebody that you trust, or a family member? Or do you think it should be someone who sort of understands more the coping strategies and tactics to get through it.
Yeah, I think if we think of friends and we think of family, they want the best for you. So they'll be like, look, don't worry about it, or don't do this, or don't think about it. And sometimes that can be unhelpful to us because that subconsciously sends us the message, I shouldn't be thinking about this, or I'm too much, or this isn't right for me to talk about this. And we shut down. So again, we become like that turtle going back in the shell and being like, oh, I better not come out because what are people going to think? So sitting with someone where you feel safe, and you can have some discovery calls with coaches, with therapists, just to understand who you align with, who you feel you connect with. And it doesn't have to be someone who is a professional in imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome is just the tip of the iceberg. Underneath that, we have the self-doubt, which comes from our upbringing. So if you go back into like childhood, understanding your patterns, a lot of therapists and coaches have this experience. But if you just let them know that this is what you're looking for, and I think it's Kirsty, I just want to answer that about alleviating. Does it alleviate, or is it that you learn to live with the imposter syndrome? But the imposter syndrome, if we think of our neural pathways, the imposter syndrome has become really, really powerful in our neural pathway. So it's become the stronger one. But what we're doing is we're trying to create a new neural pathway. And that right now may exist, but it's quite faint. But the more you do it, the stronger that becomes. So the whole point of that is that it's not about that we get rid of the imposter syndrome, but it's learning to live with it, but get stronger in yourself to be able to learn to manage that imposter syndrome.
So hopefully that answers your question there, Scott.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes friends, family, work colleagues just say things like, just believe in yourself. Like, well, yeah, but how? You know,
that's a powerful
only
question.
but that easy.
Yeah, how do I do it? Like, so many people have the awareness. People here right now, it's like, yeah, I've had messages saying, oh, I know that I've got the imposter syndrome. How do I change it? And the how to is what is the point to change? Because if you don't know how to do something, it's like, oh, I want to build a house, but how do I build a house? What do I need? And that's where you want to trust someone to be able to take you on that journey. So that these are certain questions that you can ask to a professional if you do want further support.
And how would you suggest finding that kind of professional? Is it you Google it? Are there websites? How would you find somebody to work with?
So if we think of therapy, there's things like Counseling Directory, Psychology Today, you can go on to. In terms of coaches, they have their own websites as well that you can go onto, or you can just Google and find out, or recommendation, word of mouth, or even if you're in a workplace, you can ask if there's insurance and go down through the HR route and just say, these are the things that I want to focus on. So again, there's so many different avenues and routes, and I'm happy to answer any questions that people have about it if they do want to reach out.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. So Kirsty, before we wrap up, we need to talk about our next show, don't we?
We do. It's a very exciting show. It's happening on the 27th of June, and I believe it's about non-execs, isn't it, Lee?
How to be a non-exec in energy and clean tech with Jo Butlin. So Jo's had a stellar energy career. She's now a consultant. She holds several non-exec roles, chair roles. So she'll talk about her career, how she got to where she is, and also how you can create your own opportunities as well to be a non-exec. And it's Tuesday, the 27th of June.
It is indeed. Same time as usual at 12 o'clock. Fantastic. So Lalitaa, we've been through a lot today, and I know in a minute Lee's going to summarize up, but if you were to say, out of all of the things that we've spoken about, what's the one thing that people should do, the top tip that they should take away? What should they do?
Don't let the fear take over. So we all have fear, but don't let it lead your life. Don't let it stop you from doing things that you're capable of. And right now you're in this space, you're in this bubble of fear. And the fear is like, don't do this and don't do this and don't do this. And that's the one that's the loudest in your head. So you aren't going to do it because, again, mind, body, that you're here for survival. You want to make sure that you're okay. So it is about, hang on, learning to identify the fear and not letting the fear just control you to lead. It's a bit like, when you see someone and they're walking their dog, and they're not walking their dog's walking them, and they're just really trying to keep up with their dog. But when you learn to manage your dog, it's like learning to manage your emotions in some ways, that you are really regulating and you're in control. And that's what you want to get to. You want to get to a space where you're understanding more of your emotions, your fear, why it shows up. And when you do that, honestly, everything changes.
I used to have a public speaking fear, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So it was like, I'm going to deal with this. So I joined a public speaking group. I did comedy stand-up. Never going to do that again. But I dealt with it, and that fear subsides. So it's acknowledging it, dealing with it, isn't it?
It's like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You go up on stage and people are just like, what is he talking about? What is the
Well, if
worst?
you do comedy stand-up, you can get shit thrown at you. So
Even
maybe
that,
not comedy
you will
stand-up.
survive. You will still get through that.
Yeah.
You'll be like, okay, you know what? This is something that I feel like maybe I'll try again if I want to, or if I feel like I've had my chance at it and I don't want to do it. That's okay as well. At least you've done it.
I very much hope that's been filmed somewhere, Lee, because I'd like to see it.
Not.
But it is, again, Lee, it's like the elephant in the room. And I know that we've touched on this before, but the elephant in the room is the more that we notice this elephant there, and it's like, oh, I don't want to acknowledge it. I don't want to acknowledge it. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's ways that it starts to like make it sort of like it announces that it's there, and you're trying to just hide from it and ignore it. But you know what? It always catches up. So it is about just acknowledging that fear. And sometimes we make it bigger than it actually is. And it's not as big as we think. So even when I'm working with people, they're like, oh, is that what's been going on? And you just get to a point where you're just like, I get it now. And I'm able to speak out. I'm able to do things. I don't feel like a phony. I don't feel like I'm not good enough, because I'm going to tell my manager, this is too much work and I can't do this, or this isn't something that doesn't align with me. And you feel more confident doing it.
Yeah. And I think as well, so it's something you said previously as well, Dr. Lalitaa. Even listening to this, there's going to be so many people who are watching who are all thinking the same thing. And this is something that you've mentioned a couple of times, is that this isn't a unique thing. Lots of people feel this way. You're not alone. You have people, you have options, you have people to talk about who will understand similar things, right?
Yeah, it's relatable. It's relatable if we are vulnerable and we share. But again, like we said, with imposter syndrome, we don't know what's going on in someone else's mind. We don't know what doubt that they have. But once we start sharing and we're more vulnerable with it, we realize how many more people are actually feeling this way. And it's okay to feel this way. But it's having the tools to then manage it. So you're not then just limiting it.
Just on that, Lalitaa, so if people want to reach out with you, how should they connect with you?
They can connect on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, you've got a book coming out on this subject as well, haven't you?
I do indeed. All about imposter syndrome, high functioning anxiety, and I'm really excited about it.
Okay, put me down, please, for a pre-order.
Something to look out for.
Yes, in the next few months, I'll give you more information about it. So just follow and connect, and I'll keep you updated with it.
Thank you.
Amazing. So, Lee, we've had a couple of comments again. So Esther said some really useful advice, and Baljit said great analogies, really useful talk. So I think it's been well received. Lee, how about you summarize up and take us out for the rest of the show?
So I think to summarize, I think the key thing is to don't avoid it. You need to acknowledge your feelings. Journaling can help to write down what your imposter is saying. You can't be good at everything all the time. Focus on what you can do, and practice gratitude, because it rewires that negative bias towards a positive bias. And give Lalitaa a call, because clearly she's an expert and I think she can help you a lot.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Lee, for running a fantastic show. Thank you to Lalitaa for honestly offering some great advice, some really useful things that I know I'm going to take away. So thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for watching today and for being here with us today. And we will see you on the 27th of June.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.